different best practices that we have brought into our system to take this curriculum forward in an online setup. Followed by this, we would be actually giving you two practical live examples from our two teachers who are present here with us. One will be a maths online class to give you an understanding and induction as to how we would be teaching mathematics when it comes to teaching online, followed by a session by our English faculty who would be giving you a practical example of how English is to be taught online. The objective of giving you these two sessions along with my discussion is for you to understand, first of all, the quality control that we use when it comes to online teaching, the functionality of how online teaching works at Mount Dios, and the unique practices that we have been able to incorporate into our digital learning system to make sure that the curriculum that we have developed is completely optimized online. Followed by these three sessions, there will be a Q&A session where we would welcome questions from all the people on the call, parents, others, teachers, people who have joined us. Please feel free to connect with us. You can write to us in the questions in the chat panel. And also you can unmute yourself at the end of the call and ask the questions directly. During the call, I would request you to keep yourself on mute so that the call can happen in a very fluid manner. And I would make sure to address all the questions and queries that you have during the session. Right. So, as I mentioned to you, the objective of today's call is, first of all, to debunk a lot of myths that are surrounded the process of online teaching and learning. Now, when I say debunking basically what I'm trying to say is to clarify a lot of myths and a lot of rumors that have developed into the education industry, because there are a lot of different practices that are followed by different schools, different stakeholders when it comes to showcasing that we are teaching online. That means as a school, any school for that matter. Now, the problem that is happening is, since the lockdown, right, this was a situation that not only in India, but the rest of the world in the education fraternity, nobody was completely prepared to face this from a teaching point of view and from a student's point of view. So when the schools got shut, right, there were two kinds of systems that came into place. System A was a system where people involved were absolutely proactive. They went back to the drawing board and they started understanding the main challenges that they're going to face in the next, let's say, 4 to 6 to 8 months, and what are the practical solutions of these challenges. Now, what I mean by that is practical solutions mean that if I am teaching 8 subjects or 7 subjects across different spectrum of classes, right, ranging from kindergarten to grade 12, how will I make my curriculum functional? That's the first point. How will I reach the child of a different age group in the same way that I was reaching them in a physical classroom? How will I make sure that the parents in my school understand completely the digital policy that the school is employing? I, as a parent, should be absolutely clear on how the assessment is going to happen, how the reporting is going to happen, and how do I connect with the teachers and the management when I have questions. These are some of the basic Q&A factors that we have been able to establish given the market research in the current scenario. So, to give you an understanding, people who were able to preempt the situation, people who were able to visualize what is going to happen in the next 1 year, were able to build solutions right away. Then there was a second group of people who were still in a procrastinated mode, who were not exactly able to understand the intensity of the problem, which is the pandemic. They were not able to understand how to interpret education online in a complete mode, and they struggled with conducting quality online classes. A simple example that I would give you when it comes to quality online classes is, if as a school your child is put through 6 to 7 Zoom sessions or online sessions through the day, which are completely teacher centric. What I mean by teacher centric is they're lecture based, where if you're not giving an opportunity for the students to interact, if you're just using a video mode of, let's say, speech for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And at the end of the session, you are sending worksheets or assessments to your students. So what happens in this kind of a system, which is a one-dimensional system, is the teacher is just passing on information. Student willingness, if the student is willing to receive the information, they would receive it. If the parents and the students are willing to go through the assessment, they will do it. But what will happen is at the end of this whole 1 to 2 hour program, the amount of learning that will seep into the child of that particular topic is coming out to maximum 10-15%. That's it. The reason why this is happening is quite simple. I had a lot of questions coming from parents in the recent times that, watching television and watching a teacher online giving a webinar, what is the difference? Or what is the difference between a teacher talking for 40 minutes or watching TV on an educational channel, which is a very critical question. And I really took that question home and I started understanding the depth of that question, which is absolutely true. That means that if a teacher is taking a session for any subject, it is absolutely important for us to understand how to make that subject reach to the age group that we're dealing with. That means online teaching for a grade 2 student is completely different from an online teaching session for a grade 12th or a 10th student. Second, teaching subject specific content. That means if I as a teacher am using mathematics through 10 different mathematical tools to make each and every part of a topic understandable to the student online, then I'm successful. If I'm using only one mode like Google call, Zoom call, or any Skype call, and then I'm expecting the children to understand each and every subject, is not going to work. This is something which we have to first of all accept. We have to understand as parents why this will not work. And then we have to move forward to understanding what are the solutions that will work. So right now, people who are in the education industry, who are visionaries, who are thinking forward, and not just now, they have been thinking about these challenges for the last 4 to 5 months. And they've been sitting on the drawing board and understanding and drawing solutions which are practical. So in today's session, we would be taking you through some of the functional, practical solutions when it comes to online teaching. And the first important factor as a parent that you have to remove from your mind and then from your child is online teaching is a substitute to a school session. See, if we go with a preconceived mindset that online teaching is just an alternative and it is not completely going to give my child the full quality, then before you even start the session, you have already sort of 50% you've gone down in your mindset. If you go down and if you take that same mindset and you pass it on to your child, then the child maybe is sitting at 50% and is not reluctant and will go to 80% down. So by the time the child goes on the call, the child is not at all motivated or not at all interested because the child feels online teaching is just a substitute. So it's a vicious circle. What I mean by vicious circle is it starts at some point, and yes, the quality of teaching is a major factor in it too. The person who is teaching your child, the way the person is teaching, is the person able to incorporate a system where they can engage 15, 20, 25 students in the session individually. In the education industry, we always talk about differentiation. Differentiation basically means it's a simple thing that I should be able to understand the level, the needs, and the understandings of each and every student in my classroom. And then I should be able to customize my lesson based on that. If I'm not able to do that, what I'm simply doing is I am regurgitating information into a system, be it digital, be it physical, and whichever student is able to understand whatever part of it will absorb it, internalize it, but the students who don't have the same level will not. Every single parent here who has a child will agree with me that every child, if you put 20 kids in a room together, they will have a different personality. We all agree with that. They will have a different, unique way of thinking. We all agree with that. Then if they have a different way of thinking, a different, unique personality, different way of communication, how do you expect them to learn the same topic in the same way? It just does not make practical sense. So we at Mount Dios realized that this is one of the core incompetencies in the education industry. The incompetencies that in theory we are able to talk about, a lot of major factors like transdisciplinary approach, holistic education. The education industry has been regurgitating these topics over and over again. But when it comes to the practical interpretation of these topics, is the school actually able to optimize it? Now, this was a challenge which the world was facing when we were still in a physical setup. And this challenge has become tenfold when you transform into an online setup. So, what we call now in our present situation is ground zero. Why we call it ground zero is because everything that we used to know is the right way, or the standard of doing something has gone. A new standard, a new quality control, a new benchmark has developed. I'm going to talk a little bit about this benchmark because it is very important for you to understand why this benchmark is critical when it comes to online teaching. The benchmark, if schools are able to successfully incorporate, is a mixture of blended learning. I'm sure a lot of you through media, through educational channels, must be hearing about this topic again and again. Blended learning is the new normal. But what does it actually mean? Blended learning, in simple terms, is a combination and an equilibrium between digital timetable and a physical timetable. In the coming 6 to 8 months, maybe even 12 months, given the scenario of the pandemic and given the situation where schools will start opening up, a school which is going to be successful is a school which will be able to, first of all, visualize what is going to happen next. That means if I am teaching a subject online and I'm running an online curriculum, I should equally have the perfect time to take that curriculum into a physical classroom. And if given a situation where the government says that we have to shut schools again, I as a school should be absolutely proactive to come back to the online system and do not disrupt the learning process. How will this happen? I have to induct my students absolutely clearly as to what is what, how it is going to happen. Children, this is physical learning, this is online learning, this is a difference. If you come back into online learning, this is how we will do it. These are the possible problems that we're going to face, and these are the possible solutions that we're looking at. So you, as a teacher, as a school, as a principal, you have to be extremely visionary to think ahead. If you as a school are thinking on a day-to-day basis that let's try to focus on what's happening today, tomorrow we don't know what's happening. Yeah, it is true, we don't know what is happening tomorrow. But if you're not preparing for that tomorrow, then you are in a way committing a crime, because you're not ready to take your children to the next step. You're not safeguarding your children's learning future by going into the future, right? So we call ourselves a future ready school. The reason why we've always been talking about a future ready setup, which has now become so important, is because you have to always think about the possible challenges and the possible problems that you're going to face and solve them now. If we solve them now, then we will not face friction when these problems actually happen, right? So to give you an understanding of what is this blended learning, a lot of parents have been asking me this question over and again. How do we use blended learning? What is the involvement of the parent? There are many questions, and of course during the length of this call I will be getting different kinds of questions related to this. So when we talk about blended learning, you as a parent need to understand the first thing. Now if I'm sitting and talking to you, if you're going to office at home, you would always prefer going to office by, you'll make a small little space in your house, or a place where you feel comfortable, you feel professional, and then you would like to get on a meeting with your bosses and your colleagues and your teammates, the people who are working from home. See, in the same way, the child's mindset works exactly the same. If as a parent and even as a school, we don't encourage the child to make a digital workstation space for digital learning at home, then a lot of children are found, on the bed, on the couch. Parents are watching it because it is not entirely the parents' fault, because the school has not been able to tell the parents that this is how it is to be done. That when I'm taking a session, the child has to be on a specific space with a specific time, with a specific amount of discipline. And only then will the session be successful, right? So The first thing that we are developing in our curriculum when it comes to online teaching is a digital workstation policy, which will apply to the teacher, which will apply to the student, which will also apply to the parents. Second thing we are developing is the digital discipline policy. If, as a school, you are able to impose discipline in a physical building, you have to adapt that same discipline policy and interpret it into a digital setup. How do we do that? It's quite simple. If a teacher is taking a session in the same call, I will have at least two administrators who are maintaining the quality control of the session. They're constantly watching the children to make sure that they're all paying attention. They're sitting properly. They're also constantly monitoring the call to make sure that parents are not involved with the children when they don't have to be. That brings me to another very important point that is critical to online learning. When you talk about small children, when we talk about kindergarten, when we talk about primary years, when we talk about grade 1, 2, and 3, the system of teaching has to be completely different. We encourage at least one parent to be present with a kindergarten student when the session is going on. You would find that at Mount Dios, we have come up with different kinds of solutions when it comes to teaching small children. You cannot expect a grade upper kindergarten student or a low kindergarten, even a grade 1 student, to sit in front of a system for 4 or 5 hours. That's just not practical. It doesn't make sense. So you have to reduce the screen time for that child. You have to involve the parent in the call so that the parent can actually understand what the teacher is teaching and then take the learning forward at home. You would be receiving recorded video lessons from the teachers, which would also give you clear instructions as to what to do after the lesson. The worksheets that we have designed are interactive to this extent that each worksheet has an interactive board, which can be physically sent to you in the sense of a PDF, and it will also be sent to you digitally live. So teachers would also be talking about, when they're doing a worksheet, it will be an online worksheet where the teacher would be filling it up right in front of the child, and the child would be doing it on their side. Right? These are just some of the examples I wanted to give you to make you understand as a parent that if your child is at a formative years and if your child is at a senior year, there is a massive difference in how we perceive online teaching. And there's a massive difference in the assessment system. Now, I want to also highlight the importance of assessment. Right? This is another area where schools are struggling because they're not able to build a proper, systemized, streamlined assessment system. Because as a school, if I am teaching something, how do I make sure that the test paper that I've given to the child or the assessment that I've given to the child is actually done by the child? Or if I'm giving some kind of work, is it actually being copy pasted from the internet, or is there help from a student's friend or parent? All these factors have to be checked. So the first thing that we are looking at is we are using a plagiarism software. Plagiarism software basically means any work that the student says is my work is going to come to us. We will be running it to a software which will check originality of that work, and if any of that work is taken from, let's say, any other source. So the teacher will have a clear understanding that has the student written this or has it been copied from the internet. Right? This is a plagiarism software. Second comes the point that we are doing live assessments with the students, apart from recorded assessments. That means that if there is a assessment, there's a lesson that has happened, it will be followed by probably a day or two of a live assessment where the teacher and the student will be sitting together, and it will be timed. Okay, it will be timed to the aspect that the teacher can actually see what the student is writing. After finishing the write-up or the assessment, the student will send the file to the teacher. So that way we are able to maintain that the student, whatever the student is writing, is their own work. It is not coming from somewhere else. So that is again a very critical factor when it comes to online teaching. As parents, myself being a parent, I also want to highlight a very important thing that has happened in the last few months. In the education industry, we always believe that 50 to 60% of what children learn is at school, but the rest of 40 to 45% is actually the environment at home. Now, this has become like what we call a home run, because now the complete learning process and the atmosphere is at home. So what happens is parents as facilitators into the learning process, their critical value has increased dramatically. If a system where the teacher and the parent are on the same page, they both understand their values, they both understand what they are supposed to do for the child, and they have a perfect equilibrium. Now, this kind of a system would be extremely successful. If this communication does not happen between the parent, between the teacher, there will be massive amount of confusion, right? So these kind of minute practices, see, we have gone into extreme minute details, and we have tried to plug out any possible error or problem that could happen in an online session. What I want to repeat also here is that when I'm talking about an online session, what you also need to understand is, first of all, from your mindset, at least for the next 6 months, you have to remove this mindset that this is an optional system, or this is just an online session. This is a regular session. We as a school treat this as a regular academic session. So the quality control that we are trying to bring in is the same one that a student would experience in a classroom in a school. So if we are going into that amount of effort to make sure that our curriculum is of the same quality that happens in a classroom, that same mindset has to come from the parents. See, the times have changed. The role of the teacher is not just a teacher anymore. The teacher is a counselor, the teacher is a mentor, the teacher is a guide. And in the same way, the parent has also taken up these roles. So, what I would advise to a lot of parents who are here on call is, when you're talking to your children at home, be very careful the kind of language that we use with our children, because children are, like clay. They would adapt, they would mold on the information that you give them. So, we have to be very careful of the kind of information we give them. And we have to, as parents, encourage the students to understand that this is not just an alternative, this is the best solution that you have right now, and you have to maximize its use, right? This is the mindset that Mount Dios is using, and I would really appreciate people in different schools and wherever your students are studying to bring this step forward. What it means in teaching methodologies, we call it positive reinforcement. Right now, there is a lot of stress on parents. I agree. There's a lot of stress factor on the children. This is the first time in their lives they're experiencing something like this. So, as parents, it is very important for us to not let that stress that we have seep to the child. And mind you, this applies to the teachers also. As a teacher, it is my duty to not let my personal stress seep onto the child. The child has to understand that, yes, of course, there's a challenge in the world, but there are people to support me. I have a principal who listens to me. I have a teacher who's always available to talk to me. And my parents support me and understand what my school is doing. This is the way the child will psychologically feel secure. The first thing is the positive environment that we have to give the child so that the learning comes out to be positive. This is something that we critically believe in at Mount Dios. And I'm sure that most of the parents would agree with me on this topic. Right. So I've given you a bit of an induction on the system of what we're looking at when it comes to online teaching and learning. What are the systems that we're building into place which are practical? I thought the best way for parents to understand what I'm talking about is by actually giving you a practical session. So Ms. Gayatri, who is our maths faculty, is here with us. I'm going to hand it over to her, where she's going to give you an actual practical demonstration of how maths is taught using different online tools. We would follow that with a session with our English faculty, Ms. Sandeep, who will again give you a different kind of a experience of how English is taught using online sessions. And after that, we will jump into a Q&A session with all of you. Right. So, Ms. Gayatri, if you're here on call, let's start your session, please.
Yes, sir. Good morning, dear parents, my dear students. Hope this Sunday you can enjoy with this math session. As Sir already introduced me, I'm Gayatri here, having 18 years of teaching experience in mathematics. I've done my MSc, MPhil, and B.Ed. And then apart from that, I have a lot of exposure to online teaching. So we at Mount Dios are ready to accept the challenge, and so we are ready with the online teaching, all the various possibilities. So today I'll be presenting you a small topic, and then I will take you to various mathematical tools which are already available. So let's see how it goes. So if at all you have anything, please drop your messages in the chat box. Please mute your mics and just start with the, I mean, you can go along with my session. So I'll be sharing my screen. Yeah. Yes. So you can identify, this is a short math session for all of you. So please identify the keywords which are involved in this figure, or you can call it as a GIF file. So please, you can write whatever you feel or whatever comes to, whatever the words, keywords come to your mind. You can ask your children also. So your time starts now. It's just a small starter activity. It's a 1 minute activity. So this is how we are going to start our session. So this is what is brain in gear. So I want all of you to get ready with the session. So in the meanwhile, you can start thinking. The moment I share my keywords, whatever I felt, then you can relate to them and think whether it is correct or wrong. So this is, you can think, please identify the keywords involved in this GIF. So the timer has already started. As I've already told you, it is a 1 minute timer based activity. So we are almost done with 1 minute. So the time up. So whatever the words which come into your mind. So most of you think that it is just a beam of light or ray of light falling. Yes, most of you are right. You can just have a look. It's a ray. It's a line, isn't it? A line falling, a line segment. So I'm taking you to a math session, so please be prepared. So parallel lines. So you can see the beam of rays, they're just parallel and then perpendicular, and then I will take you to intersecting lines also. So let's move to the next part. So today's topic, I think by this time you should have got the idea. So we are learning, today we are going to learn about geometry, the basic part of geometry. I'm not going in detail, it's only just the basic part. So our main objective for today's session is to identify the different types of lines. Okay, we are discussing only the lines. So these are the words or the vocabulary which you're going to come across throughout the lesson. Okay, and then so let's define what do we mean by a point. So as most of you have children at home, so by this time they know it's just a dot. They keep on answering or prompting their answer at the back. I do understand. So a point is just a mark of position. It is represented by a small dot. In fact, point is just the basic unit of geometry. And in English, we call it as a full stop, or you can call it even as a period. So I'm just trying to link up with this. So as I've told you already, we are just discussing with different types of lines. Okay, by seeing this picture, you may feel water is flowing off. Yes, you're right. Water is flowing continuously. So it's like in both the directions. Hope you can see I'm talking about A and B. So it is infinitely moving out in both the directions. Yes, you're right. Most of you are right. We are talking about a line. A line has no beginning nor end. It continues indefinitely in both the directions. So mathematically, how do you represent? We have to represent it with the form of arrows. Okay, so it is represented by AB. So this is what is a line. So few students have confusion with line and line segment. So line means it has no beginning nor end. So the best example we can have it here. So let's move to the next one. What do we call as line segment? So what do we mean by a line segment? So a line segment, as we say segment, it has a beginning point and an end point. So it is represented by this. So in the map, we already know we want to say we have a starting point. We know where is our starting point, where we are starting and where we are going to end. So always a beginning and an end point, then it surely makes a line segment. Okay, so mathematically it is represented like this. So let's move to the next one. What do we mean by array? Already in the beginning, I have given you a good example of array. Let's move ahead. So has a beginning point but no end point. So all of you please remember, all the dear students, please do remember that array has a beginning point but it has no end point. So the best example is take about the sun rays. So you can see it has a beginning point but no end point. So the best example which I can give you is the sun rays for a ray. So I'm just trying to relate the mathematical aspect of geometry to the real life world. Okay, so this is what is a line segment. It looks like this. Now, let's move to the intersecting lines. So as you all know, you can put a cross like this. This is what is an intersecting line. By this time, few of you have already tried, I believe. So two or more lines that meet at a point. So when we say this meets at this point, so this is what is two or more lines, they meet at a point. So I thought the best example which I can give you is the bridge. Okay, so this is what is the point of intersection. So I'm just always trying to relate with my mathematical concept with a real life example so that my students, my Mount Dios students can clearly understand. So let me move to the next one. What do we mean by parallel lines? So parallel lines are this: two lines in a plane that do not intersect. They do not touch each other at any point. This is what do I mean by a parallel line. Okay, so it is represented by this. It's just like 11, like this. So these are what do we mean by parallel lines. So mathematically, you can represent them in this way. So can you try out to relate it with a real life example? Yes. The best example is the railway track, which moves continuously. So this is what is the best example for parallel lines. Hope if my Mount Dios students learn maths in this way, I think it is really very good for them. They will not forget any concept. It is very easy for them to understand. Now, let's move to the next one. What do we mean by perpendicular lines? So perpendicular lines forms a T, an inverted T like this, or a T like this. So perpendicular lines form a right or a 90-degree angle. It is represented by inverted T. So mathematically, we can represent it like this. So I do understand, again, you are looking for a best example. So I thought the traffic signal where we call it as the T junction. So this is the best example I can give you. So mathematically, we can represent it like this also. So either you can represent it as inverted T, or here also we can represent it. Now, let's move to the next part, critical thinking. So with this concept, I've just covered few different lines, whatever we have learned in your primary school. So let's try with this. Mark a point on your notebook. If you don't have your notebooks, just you can imagine a point, draw a line passing through this point. How many lines can you draw? I think by this time you feel you started drawing all the possible lines. All the moms at home would try out doing the rangoli, isn't it? So this is the best example we have. So with this single point, so with this single point, I can just move back. So this is how we have. So with one point, I've just drawn many lines. So we have infinitely many lines here. So how many lines can you draw which pass through a single point? I can draw many lines, infinitely many lines. So now I'm going to take you to a small research work. Please do think. So you can see here some firefighters or aircrafts moving here. So what happens if they intersect? Just think what happens intersect. If they intersect, you know what is going to happen. I'm not going to talk about it. It's just a small extension task just to think yourself, how does the air traffic signaling system works? How do you connect it the same to the present topic? So this is the best real life example. We know that they should never intersect each other. So with this, I will complete this topic. Geometry I have done with the basic concepts of geometry. Now I will just take you to the next few online available tools. Online available tools. We have so many available tools. So let me take you to this. The one we have is this is what is foo plot. Okay, so most of your children, I think by this time you would be struggling when you want to draw graphs or something. So I'll just give you one example to show various online tools readily available for us. Since long they are available, we have used it many times in our regular sessions in the smart boards. So I thought for the parents and the children, let me share our views. Okay, now I'm going to just give a line, say a linear. Okay, so x plus 2, if I say, how does it look like? It looks like this. So 2 and 2. Suppose I change it. Suppose I give x plus 8. So I'm going to get a line like this. So this is how fooplot.com. It's an online tool. It's an online website which we have. It works out. So this is how a graphical representation or any type of graph work which we can easily do it. Earlier children, they take the graph papers, they do it, the teacher, they will draw it on the board and then they copy. So this is the best way. I think it is very crystal clear for the children also to understand where we are plotting out the points. So I thought that let me explain about this mathematical tool which we use it in the regular sessions. Okay, this is one of the mathematical tool. Just I would like to share with this. Now let me move to the another mathematical tool. This is one of the mathematical tool we have. So let's start with this. Suppose we are doing with constructions. We are going with geometry. We are doing constructions. I do understand. So when we draw, please draw a line segment and then do. So instead of giving so many instructions, I will show a live demo for the children to easily understand. So I'm just giving you a live, so where you can do the construction very, very easily. So by this time, most of you would have guessed what is that we have done. We have just constructed an angle of 30 degrees. So this is one best example I thought I would have shared with you. Now, coming to the other one is what is, we have a GeoGebra, a wonderful mathematical tool we have. So as I'm talking about, I'm not going to go in detail with this. I'll just give you the basic concept, the point, what we have discussed, the line segment, the line. Okay, so if you want to measure an angle, if you want to draw a line segment, if you want to draw parallel lines, so I can measure that. So all these kind of tools are available. So let me move. I can show you few other things. Suppose I want to do a regular polygon. Yes, with 4 sides. So this is a regular polygon which I have. So now let me take to one more. Okay, regular polygon with 3 sides. Okay, this is a regular polygon. In the same way, if I want to have a regular polygon, okay, with 8 sides. So this is what is a regular polygon with 8 sides. So earlier, all these things becomes little difficult. Now, with all the readily available softwares, all these things are very, very easy for us to do. So this is what, being a very experienced math teacher, I would like to share all my inputs to all of you. Now it is over to our English teacher, um, Miss Sandy.
Thank you, Ms. Gayatri. That was a very insightful maths lesson for all the parents to know how at Mount Dios we're going to be very careful about the details that go into all of our lessons. And this, let me tell you, is just a small demonstration. A full fledged lesson is going to be obviously more detailed. Now, coming to the English language. So, I'm a part of the English faculty here at Mount Dios. And today I'll be first giving a small demonstration of a grammar lesson for grade 2, which will be on adjectives. So, before, like what I do in all my classrooms is before just giving the meaning of what adjectives are and then maybe give few examples, instead of this whole rigmarole, I would talk about something which the students would be able to relate to. Now, for instance, this is grade 2, the topic is adjectives. I'm going to show a small noun here. Now, this is a chocolate, which I'm sure all the students, grade 2 students, can relate to, and they all like. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask about 5 ways in which they can describe this chocolate. So, what are the 5 words that come to our mind? Okay, that this particular one is red, that's an adjective. It's small, that's another adjective. What else? It's sweet, obviously, it's a chocolate, it's sweet, it's nutty. So, all these are adjectives. And also, most importantly, it is tasty. Tasty. Now, what better way can we say that? It's delicious. So, here we go. While doing adjectives, we are also working on our vocabulary, pronunciation, word stress. All this in detail, I will come to it. But first, let's get back to our adjectives. So, what is basically adjectives? The words that describe a noun, the words that describe something which tells us about the qualities of a thing are called adjectives. So here the adjectives we used were which told us about the size, the color, the taste, and some other descriptions that can be given about the thing. Uh, then from moving from here, I would ask the students to think about other things which they like, maybe their pet dog, their favorite toy, and just tell me 5 qualities about those things. Maybe about their toy that it's very, it's this big teddy bear they're talking about. It's big, it's very furry, it's brown in color. So all these are adjectives. Uh, the concepts that I'll be using here in Mount Dios are the concepts that are exclusive to Cambridge University. In Cambridge University, under this program CELTA, we are taught concepts how to teach English in a very real time concept, not something just about definitions and meanings, but about how do you use English in an everyday language and how do these concepts become a part of you, become internalized, so that it becomes as it comes as naturally to you as your mother tongue. Well, so now going to adjectives again, and like I was saying about vocabulary, so the word that we got today was delicious. Now, how do we say correctly, say the word delicious? Delicious. The stress. The stress in a word is very important. Now, we can't say delicious. That'll be wrong. We want to say delicious. The stress is in the middle. So that's very important in a word. And in each of my lesson, my focus is going to be that the students, once they leave the class, will have 3 new words as a part of their vocabulary which they would have learned. So one word we got here is delicious. So we know now delicious is tasty, and this chocolate is sweet. Now, what's the opposite of sweet? Things which are not chocolate. What's the opposite of that? What's the word for that? That is savory. And how do we spell it? Savoury. Savory. So if it's the opposite of sweet, what does it mean? What could it mean? So here, I would get the inputs of the students. And very importantly, in my classes, I will be doing nominative feedback. Now, what is nominative feedback? I will be selecting a student who has to give me the answer. This obviously tells me how interested everyone is in the class and if they're actually paying attention. So every few minutes, it is very critical to ask concept check questions, that whether they are understanding the concept, and if I'm giving them any task, instruction check questions. So once I give them an instruction, suppose I give them a worksheet to do, and I tell them you have to do it in 5 minutes, then I'll ask another student, okay, so how much time do you have that you have to finish this in? And they will answer 5 minutes. So So that's how I will come to know, yes, they have followed the instructions, they know what they have to do. So, in this adjectives lesson, after a bit of lively interaction with the students in terms of vocabulary and new words, and talking about new words, finding out their meaning, we'll go on to doing a worksheet. Now, worksheet would be as simple as 10 sentences will be there, and there'll be adjectives in it, which the students will have to underline or encircle and put it back on the screen. So, we'll be using share screen a lot in the English lessons. So, the students will be able to see exactly the same page that I'll be using, and while I'm using screen share, I can see each and every student as well. So there will be complete attention given to all the students. Now we know that the world that we're living in, there are all kinds of software, so there's all kind of development. So even if it's a virtual class instead of a traditional physical classroom, still it's not a problem at all. The classes are going to be conducted in the same manner. Now, as a follow-up home assignment, I'll be asking students, using the words that we had discussed in the classroom, to write sentences on it. The sentences they'll be writing will be very simply put, simple present sentences, because if they're writing about their toy, they'll say, so my favorite toy is Doraemon. It is blue in color. It can fly. It has a magical pocket. All these are simple present tenses. So without knowing, without realizing that they're writing sentences using simple present, they'll actually be doing it. So for the next class, when they come, before I start with the by saying that, today we're going to be studying simple present, I will ask them the sentences that they have written. And when they tell me, I will tell them, there you go. Those are your simple present. So, what is simple present? One of the ways is the facts that you have written. All that is simple present. Well, so this was a short synopsis on how grammar lessons can be made more interactive using concepts like realia, which is using real life objects in the classroom. Now, moving on to the senior classes. Now, one of the basics in senior classes is their poetry. Now, how do we make poetry more interesting? Because as soon as you tell, especially senior students, that today we're going to read a poem, they just lose interest. They don't want to be a part of that class anymore, because the kind of words we associate with poetry are like, okay, it's dull, it's boring, it's maybe written in the past, I don't know which century. I'm not interested in it. I'm more interested in what is happening now at this time. And the poems that are usually all in our syllabus are all very old classics. So how do we make that interesting? So every poem has a theme. There can be many different themes, but there's always a core, an underlying theme. So taking that theme, we can connect that theme to the present situation. Now, for instance, if we look at a poem, it's a very famous poem, Daddy, by Sylvia Plath, which talks about the oppression she faced by her father and then her husband. So both were men. So here we can talk about how oppression is faced by a woman in a patriarchal society, and whether the students think if this is happening today also or not. Is today's society also a patriarchal society? Let's talk about our own culture. Whether they think India is a patriarchal society, whether if we go more regional, whether they think here it's a more patriarchal system. Well, yes or no. Students can have a lot of divided opinion here. Some might think, uh, yes, it is still very much like that, and some might say, no, there's total equality. There is no patriarchy anymore. Everyone has equal opportunities. So opinions will definitely be divided. There'll be strong opinions, but rest assured that there will be opinions. There will be active participation, because these are the subjects, these are the topics which the students definitely will have an opinion on. So once we get the students interested by having a very strong opinion on the topic, we're going to do obviously a line by line analysis of the poem. And we will also be giving a setting of the time when the poem was written, so that the students can have a better idea of why the poet wrote like this. Maybe the things were different, the times were different then, maybe the culture of that place was different, because a lot of poets that we study in our syllabus are from England or even some from America. So, what was the system there? What was the culture there? What kind of food people ate, what kind of houses people lived in. So all that is going to be a part of it, not just the poem, to make it more interesting. And or I'll be finding out if there are documentaries, if there are any articles or anything related to that which the students can watch, because anything that they can see is what they are more interested in rather than just reading. That is today's generation. So any article that any documentary that they can view on the poem or the poet or the concepts of the poem will be suggested to the students so that they can watch it at their own free time and get more involved with the poem. So while doing this poem, the regular things like the poetic devices, they will be discussed. Poetic devices are like your metaphor, similes, alliteration, symbolism will be discussed, and apart from, like, yeah, so the themes, what are the symbols that are used, and all the poetic devices. So that's as I wanted to give you an idea of how and what all will be involved in a typical classroom of English. And in a minute now we'll be starting the question and answer session. Any question that you might have, you can leave it in the tab, or even you can unmute yourself. And our principal, Mr. Karandeep Singh, will be answering all your questions. So please be with us. Thank you.
Right. So you've had two interactive sessions with two of our teachers. I'm going to move to the Q&A section and try and address some questions. I'm going to open this forum now. You can unmute yourself and ask me questions also. And I think there was a certain question that has come to us in terms of the speed of this session. See, what you need to first of all understand is that this is first of all just an induction session. This is not a complete lesson. We are just giving you a specific induction and intro into how things are going to be when the classes are going to be taken online. So please don't take this as a full session. This is merely an induction that is being given to you. And based on this induction, you should be able to understand the kind of quality, the kind of depth that we use. And of course, after this, if you have further questions, if you want to know further about the subjects that we taught today, if you want to know about other subjects, how we are teaching them, you can always write to us and we will address those questions individually. So I just wanted to clarify that this is just an induction into subjects and an induction into the teaching and learning process that happens online. This is not the complete lesson in itself. It will not be practical to sit here and do a complete 1 hour to 45-minute lesson. Our objective is to show you how we conduct lessons so that you can understand, you can have questions, and then we can take the discussion forward about those questions, right? Okay, so I'm going to open the forum now. Uh, can you give me, I mean, you can unmute yourself, and if you have any questions, please ask me that.
Respected sir, this is Pankaj Sharma.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. It was a very good session and learnt a lot of things from there. Actually, the maths, the way ma'am has used the tools and all, those were really excellent. My concern is regarding languages. Because I am a Hindi teacher and I need something, different guidelines so that how it can help me to take my subject in a more innovative way. I know this is just
Okay,
a
so
class. I know this is just a view on the system how you are taking the classes in this. So for my students, if I have to go for something for language in Hindi, so any innovative idea which you can share? Thank you so much.
yeah, sure. See, when it comes to any language, be it French, Telugu, Hindi, English, all of first of all, the important factor is that the school that you're working with, or any school for that matter, First thing we need to understand is that all the languages have to be given equal importance. That means equal weightage in terms of how those languages are being taught to the students. And the first rule of thumb when it comes to teaching languages is to make the students understand that each language, not just English or French, even Hindi and Tamil and Telugu, all the languages are extremely important, right? Now, when it comes to teaching languages in general, there's another interesting research that has come across is that by using ready live online tools. I'll give you an example. When I was teaching English IBDP back in Thailand to students, whose first language was not English, what I found really fascinating and interesting that used to work is what we call gamification of learning. Gamification of learning works extremely well when we are dealing with languages, be it Hindi or English or any other. So, to give you an example, gamification of learning basically means if I'm taking, let's say, Hindi concept, let's say I've taken a kavita, I've taken a shlok, I've taken muhavre. What I'm going to do is I'm going to convert that lesson into a sort of a objective game. Now, this game does not actually mean that we are playing some kind of a typical game. This is called a learning game. So what will happen is I will have a set of objectives. Maybe I will divide the class. If I have 15 students, I'll divide them into three groups. I'll give them what is the objective of this game, right? One of the very interesting examples that teachers are doing these days is that what we call virtual treasure in the box, right? There are a lot of applications. When you go online, you will find that virtual treasure in a box basically works in a way that you would basically take 5 to 6 different vocabulary aspects of Hindi, and you're going to put them into separate places in this virtual treasure box. The students will go into the teams and they are going to go into this application to find those words. And then these words have to be then connected into sentences. So let's say you are trying to teach a certain aspect of grammar. The first interesting factor is that the students will be curious. Okay, it's a team-based game. They will go and collect these words. Then you will, as a teacher, tell them that now that you've gotten the words, we're going to convert them into sentences. And then probably from the sentences, you'll move to the third level, is that you will probably look at the structure of the sentence. What is the verb in it? What is the noun in it? So what happens is, using one simple concept, you take it into three different concepts. The first important role of online teaching is to build rapport. What I mean by build rapport is that you have to absolutely get the students' interest. When you're in a physical classroom, getting the students' interest is much more easier, but there are more distractions when you are online. So as a teacher, it becomes double the effort to building that first 5 minutes. According to the Cambridge study, the first 5 minutes of any lecture is the most critical, what we call the lead-in. If your lead-in is successful in generating interest, in getting their attention, then your next 25 minutes will be extremely successful. It is also working in an inverse manner. Where your first 5 minutes are not strong, then whatever you're teaching for the next 25 minutes will not have impact. I hope I was able to answer in some way to your question.
No, it's a two. Thank you, sir. It was awesome, and really, it will help me. But one more thing which is coming in my mind. Though we are in India, we are taking different syllabus like CBSE is there or the state board is there. How Cambridge, we have IB syllabus or we have PIB syllabus. So Cambridge University syllabus. There also we have Hindi. So is there any difference between our CBSE and the Cambridge syllabus, like anything which we have to link up with both the syllabus over there?
Right. So when it comes to curriculum mapping between different boards, it's a good question because see, syllabus and curriculum are two different ball games. If suppose from Cambridge or CBSE you get a set of syllabus and you're given objectives of completion. Now, the curriculum that your school and you as a Hindi teacher have designed around that syllabus is going to make that syllabus successful. I'll give you an example. A typical CBSE school, which is, let's say, based on the academic progress only, will basically teach the requirements to match the syllabus, not the curriculum. So that means that whatever has been given as a set of directions, I will take that, I will go in the class, teach, do my assessment, go for my marks. If you're trying to build a much more interesting, a much more in-depth school system, then you will take that syllabus and then you're going to further convert it into a holistic curriculum. Now, when it comes to the difference between CBSE and IGCSE to, let's say, language like Hindi, the core concept stays the same. There is not a big difference in what you have to teach. The only difference probably comes in how you have to teach. And in the last 10 years, CBSE has become very student centric and progressive in its approach. So you would see a lot of activities which are happening in Hindi CBSE are actually mirroring the activities which are happening in IGCSE and IB languages. So the good news is that most of the boards are almost in sync and at par, and they always collaborate to create content in the recent times. And now this has become more prevalent because of the pandemic. Most of the boards are sharing the best practices amongst each other so that they can develop the best curriculum where the students don't struggle if it's CBSE, IB, or IGCSE. It comes to how you teach, it comes to how you develop your curriculum, and it comes to the quality of your curriculum development.
Thank you, sir. It was awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Right. I'm just going to go through the chat window and see some of the questions that have come in. Right. There is a question which is interesting where Mr. Deepak is asking us that, a child of grade 1, both the parents, I think, are working. So father is available with the child, and the father and the daughter have a language. Okay, so they don't know English and they only know Telugu. Okay, that's a very practical question, Mr. Deepak. Thank you for sharing that. See, what happens is one of the biggest challenges that parents are obviously addressing right now. Even I, as a parent, am addressing how do you balance work with your child, because those two spaces have actually merged. It was very easy. Work was separate, school was separate, life was divided. Now all of them are merged. So when they've merged, the biggest tool you can say is called child management, which is the biggest selling point right now. If a school is able to give you a proper counseling induction session from a parenting perspective, when you address your problem, let's say I'm a counselor, let's just do a role play. I'm a counselor. I am given this question by a specific parent. My objective is now to create a system for this parent where the learning can happen for the child and the parents are not struggling with their day-to-day activities. So the role of the counselor is extremely valuable and critical now in the schooling system, more so because we are on a blended learning system. Just to give you a solution to this problem, where if there is a language barrier happening between, let's say, the grandfather at home and both the parents are working, here the school's counselors and teachers would come into place. In this case, what I would do personally as a principal is that the first hour of the child's morning session will be with the counselor instead of the teacher. The counselor is going to give a set of clear instructions to the child what to expect in that day, what all will happen. And mind you, this counselor should be multilingual. So she will not only talk to the child, then she'll have a separate call with the grandfather in Telugu, who cannot understand English in this case, to explain to him what we are doing today. So one is your weekly timetable will go to the parents, but in many cases you have to have a daily discussion and with the parents or the guardians who are available in the morning to make them understand what is going to happen for the rest of the day, and that the counselor is available 24/7 during the calls or during the sessions. If the child is facing a problem, they will jump into it. In my experience, if a call is happening with a grade 1 student, the counselor will be available on the same call. That means when the call is happening, it is not the responsibility of the teacher to be getting into multiple areas, because her core is to get the quality teaching. But at the same time, the call will be shared with a counselor and an admin person who would be addressing the parallel situations or challenges happening on a live call. I hope that answers the question. Any other questions related to the online teaching and learning? Questions in reference to the campus construction and everything will be answered to you by the admin team. But I can assure you that the campus construction is well underway, and within maximum 2 to 3 weeks, the campus will be functional. But given the situation right now with the government all across the country and the world, you as parents, first of all, should be absolutely prepared mentally to understand that the next few months, it would be the best schools who can give a quality online teaching platform and actually sustain it will be the successful ones. As parents, what you need to understand right now is how much of information that the school is giving me is actually going to my child's brain. So parents, be very, very attentive. I know all of us are working and having challenges, but make sure that you do take out an hour to go through what the child went through during that day. Question your teachers, question your a school to understand, is the quality compromised? The quality of teaching and learning should not be compromised, whether I'm teaching online, whether I'm teaching physically, it has to be the same. So as a parent, you also have to raise the quality bar. And that is where schools like Mount Dios come into place, because we do not compromise when it comes to quality in any form. And we are always ready with solutions and with answers to all these queries, right? In terms of admissions, please, the admissions team will get in touch with you and they will answer all your questions. When there's a conflict in the house, the child may not concentrate on the topic. So how are we going to explain the topic? Right. So conflict again is a very broad term. I would need to understand what kind of conflict you're talking about. If it is something to do with with a piece of the home, or if there's some kind of household conflict that is happening commonly, and the student or the child is also part of that, is facing that conflict, not actively but passively, that is again a very big challenge. And I know for a fact that a lot of families and students are facing this, because there was a certain system that all of us were used to, that 7 hours I was going to work, 7 hours my kid was going to school, then they were going for, let's say, swimming, dancing, all that has come into one system. So the first thing as parents you need to understand is, if there is a conflict, why is it happening in the first place? Can you as a parent resolve the conflict for the benefit of your child? Because technically your child is now with the support of all the teachers, but the child is living with you 24/7. So whatever you are doing at home, how you're speaking at home will make a very big impression of the child. So the counselor, of course, can have a session with the child, understand the problems of the child, give solutions. But unless you don't fix the environment at home, all the work that the school and the counselor will do will go for a toss. So please make a conscious effort as parents right now in this present scenario to give positive reinforcement. Check your language when you're sitting at home, how you're talking. Make sure that the TV time versus the screen time versus the teaching time is balanced. I know it is a tricky question, but a tricky situation, but you need to be proactive, because it is the future of your child. And not just don't always think in the future sense, it is also the present of your child. So whatever you do at home will reflect on the child's personality. So work with the schools that your children are in, or work with us if the children are coming to us. Actively be involved in the teaching and learning process. We are more than transparent and open with our parents to make them understand what we are doing. We are not the kind of school which will be very secretive in telling, okay, this is not something that we are going to tell you. That scenario has gone out of the window in the world. Schools who are successful are the schools which are transparent, are talking about what they're doing, is actually showing it. So the time of procrastinating, the time of creating just theories is gone. Online teaching and learning can only be successful in schools where online teaching and learning is, first of all, taken seriously as regular classrooms, not as an additional thing which is temporary. Let me be very clear with you, this is not temporary. This is going to be the new normal, and we will have to, as parents, as teachers, as principal, come to terms with this realization and then give the best solution to our children. Right? So thank you so much, all of you, for joining us today. If you have any other questions, please feel free
Yeah,
to ask me. Yeah.
Mr. Karan, I'm Ajay speaking. I have one doubt. How each student will be concentrated? Means there will be, I think, 10 to 15 students for each session. And through online medium, online methodology, how will a teacher ensure? It will be tough for the teacher also, I do understand. But how what is your plans and what is your this thing? So see, few students might grasp early, few students need some more attention. So uh, how will this happen?
No, that's a very valid question. Thank you for asking that. In the education industry, what we always talk about is differentiation. Differentiation is basically the ability to cater to each child's level and then teach the lesson rather based on the child's capability rather than the lesson's capability, right? This is something that we have consciously developed into the curriculum. Now, how do we interpret this into an online system? I'll give you an example. If you have, let's say, 15 students in a classroom, if I'm teaching 3 topics in a day, as a teacher, I will make sure that if one topic involves 15 students in one session, the next 2 topics will be divided into, let's say, students into groups of 4, 5, 7, and even these groups will be consciously divided based on the students level and complementing level of each other. So as a teacher, my homework is to first understand the strengths and weaknesses of each child and the learning style. Is the child more confident learning visually? Is the child more confident learning by sending worksheets? Is the child shy, probably talking online? Should I then have a one-to-one session with the child after the call to ask their questions? These are some of the examples that I'm giving you, which we have thought about and gone in depth about to understand. Now, if you're running a session of 15 students with the teacher, it is absolutely imperative that in that particular session, the teacher alone would not be there from the school side. The principal, the academic team will be constantly monitoring all the sessions and also joining the sessions to give further reinforcement and support to that teacher, right? And that teacher would be given the freedom and the innovation to divide her 15 students into probably 3 sessions. What we personally believe, based on the age group, online sessions are only effective maximum to 25 to 30 minutes, not more than that. The attention span will not work. If as parents we are expecting the children to sit for a 45-minute or an hour session, please understand that will not work because the attention span online is very different. Distraction level is much more. So differentiation is very important. And differentiation means understanding the student's level first before you bring the lesson, and then trickling down the lesson based on the level to the point that I would use what we call IEP. IEP is an individualized education program. That is why we believe in a very strong teacher student ratio of 1:10. The reason why we want that is so that the teacher can give individual attention to each child during the same day, right? I hope that answers your question to an extent.
Yeah, you have answered correct, but my query came from that basic understanding. Each student cannot, as you rightly said, they can't concentrate more than 25 to 30 minutes uh, per session. No, that individual attention, how because see, they also mean through online, the children or students might be asked to write something in their notebook or worksheet or something. So how will this
Right.
exchange of worksheets will happen?
Right. May I know which grade is the child that we're talking about?
Fifth, fifth grade.
Okay. Fifth grade. Right. See, if a fifth grade child, I'll give you let's do a case study or a example of a specific subject. Let's say if the fifth grade child attends an English language class or an English grammar class at 9:30 in the morning, which goes on till 10, right? The first thing that will happen in that 30 minutes of the class is the teacher every day before the classes will happen, the timetable of each day will be sent to you as a parent. First of all, for the teachers, for the students and the parents to understand what is going to happen for this day. And
Okay.
what I would also like to point out here is that the timetable of each day will be different. We will not follow the same pattern of the timetable from Monday to Friday. Okay. Neither will we follow the same time. That means if I as a student get used to every day 30 minutes, now English, now maths, now science, automatically my level of interest will fall. I'll go into a passive mode. In order for me to make the students feel active, maybe on a Monday, I will, instead of starting with English, I will start with a music session. Maybe on a Tuesday, instead of starting with the math session, I will start with the physical education session. My whole objective is, as a school, as a teacher, I want to create a link between my subjects. That means the transdisciplinary approach for a child, which maybe he's picked up some poem topic from literature, which has historical significance in history, which the history teacher will bring, which has political significance in geography, which the SST teacher will bring, which has some nature-based link which the visual art teacher will bring. The objective is that by the time the child finishes the day, there is a linear connection and there's a vertical connection into the child's learning. And this learning has to be absolutely dynamic. I cannot give the child the same set of timetable day in and day out, because routine is the mother of all problems here. The moment you get into that routine that this is happening now, then your optimization goes down. And to answer your question also, as I was mentioning, in each session, we would make sure that apart from the teacher, there will be an assistant teacher where there's a grammar lesson, there'll be an ESL instructor to answer the questions related to grammar right away. And the worksheets that we will be making will be actually based on the delivery of the lesson. Like, for example, if in the lesson your child understood a certain thing and he raised a doubt. So what the worksheet will do is it will actually
Sorry, Mr. Karan, your audio is not coming.
Mr. Ajay, there might be a technical problem. Just give us a minute. He will be rejoining.
Correct, correct. Yes.
control, the principals and the coordinators will also be present on the same call. So the whole objective is that the principal will be moving between calls to make sure that each quality control and what has been set as an objective for the day is actually met. Post the session with the students, the teacher will be coming back to the drawing board with the principal, and there'll be a diagnostic analysis of what has worked that day, what is not working, how to change that for the next day. So that's the amount of effort we are willing to put so that the quality is not compromised in any sense. Right? So I think I've been able to answer most of the questions. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us. And it's been and the questions that you brought in are absolutely practical, relevant, right? And again, the last thing that I would like to say is that as parents and as teachers, we all need to understand that given the pandemic, we're all actually in the same boat. Our core objective is the welfare of the child. Be it a principal, be it a teacher, be it a parent, all of us want the same thing. If we start working together, you will notice that the solution will be much more emphatic, much more pragmatic, and much more realistic. So no matter where your child is studying, I will always encourage parents to be a part of the child's educational journey with the school. That is what we believe in at Mount Dios, right?
Mr. Karan, can you take one more question if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Okay. So now, have you, has the school decided on the sessions? When will it start and what will be the timings, and daily how many sessions will be there? Because my child is into Timpani school. Okay. We get information from there. AP government is not allowing online classes till 5th grade. So
right.
That is one thing. That is first thing. And second thing, I've seen these demo classes were actually good. This is the first time I'm attending this online demo class from any school, and the way it is being taught, feeling is very good actually to a parent. So,
thank you so much.
Now, what means should a student have a desktop or a laptop? Is it compulsory to go through this online classes? So
right.
These two questions.
Sure. Valid questions again, sir. See, what happens is, in a situation where, our objective is that we don't want to differentiate or discriminate based on technology at home. Our objective is to still make sure that the learning process reaches the child. So in a household, if there is a computer, there is a laptop, fine. If there is a mobile that the child wants to use, we would always teach the parents how to use parental control applications on the phone to let the child use the mobile if they're using that. And when it comes to a household where we have also thought there is no digital device, in that same sense, if the parent wants to, let's say it's a grade 1 student and the parent would like to, pass on the worksheets to the students, we are also ready in that way. That means recorded lessons will go to that child. interactive digital worksheets will go to that child, and assessment can happen that way if the child is not able to come for a video session. We would recommend, of course, if it is possible from the family to bring the child in for a live session, because the children will be able to connect in a much better manner with the teachers. But if there is a situation in any household where they're not able to come live, we have a system where recorded lessons and interactive worksheets will still go, and assessment will still happen with that child. Given the norms of the government, you're absolutely right. Different states are coming up with different norms. There is a centralized the Indian Education Board is coming up with a centralized system of curriculum from now till the end of the year. That means the rules are coming in for how much of screen time is going to be given per child, per age group, how much of time per day the child will spend with the school. All these rulings are being decided by the Indian education system, and they would apply to all boards, regardless of IB Cambridge. So based on these rulings, the timetable will be built accordingly based on the government's requirements.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Karan.
Thank you. No, thank you so much. Right. I'll just answer the last question. The assessments are conducted will be both written and oral. Yes, the assessments will be written. They will be oral. They will be real time, which will happen live. They will be based on Google Classroom assignments. They will be based on certain application assignments. Each of the written assignments that are coming to us will be checked for quality control, plagiarism, post which the assessment reflection and assessment analysis will come to the parents. It is mandatory for the parents to go through the assessment analysis and give their feedback to the school. So my objective, again, when I told you that the teachers and the students have to be and the parents have to be on the same page, is because if the school is putting in this amount of effort, the parents have to reciprocate to that effort. Even if you're able to give 1 hour, go through your child's daily assessment or weekly assessment, give your feedback on it so that the school understands that you're understanding what we're teaching. That communication gap should not happen, especially now. All right. So thank you so much again. It was wonderful connecting with all of you. Mr. Ajay, we will give you the confirmation on when the session is starting. The admission team will definitely call you today itself and give you all the details that you require for the admission process. That will happen right away. From our end, we will connect with you, and you can also connect to our office number and get all the details for admission. Thank you. Thank you so much, parents, taking out your time on a Sunday. And it was wonderful connecting with all of you. Hope to connect with you further. We would be hosting a series of more practical teaching-based webinars where you will get more understanding. But I would also urge you that our admission process is underway. So if a child is genuinely interested in moving to us, it would be ideal so that we can start inducting the child from now. So if you're genuinely interested, I would recommend to start the admission process right away. Thank you so much.